Hello, my name's Max. I'm a economist, game theorist with the Reclaim protocol. I'm going to talk to you briefly, fairly non-technically, about how ideas for using off-chain data for proof of personhood. Um, Next slide. So, talking about proof of unique personhood, not just someone's a person, but civil resistance as well. These are ideas we've discussed. So, I think we all know what we're talking about. You have a human controlling two, and a robot controlling a user. We want to identify who's who. And technology like the Reclaim protocol, I'll focus on this because that's what we know about. But it lets you provably import data from Web 2 to Web 3. This is the proof of provenance. So you want to show the provenance of your data. I actually received this data from my banking website or whatever. And then the zero knowledge proof part of it lets you selectively reveal portions of your data. So if you want to only share part of your web page or just show that you're at least 18, but not reveal your actual age, that's the zero knowledge proof part of it. So we have this giant vault of Web 2 data, and we're going to import it in. So that's just the technology on the back end. So taking a picture of that. Yeah, made that myself. Okay, so look, defining this unique personhood score. We want to be able to score how likely we think someone is to be a unique person. Sort of two ways to do this. We can have some sort of arbitrary score that doesn't have an exact interpretable meaning, but lets you compare between users, or a percentage probability that you think they're human versus non-human or a duplicate. And systems can combine four sources of information, some of them traditional and some of them unlocked by Reclaim. So we've got Web3 data, that's the most accessible. We've got Web 2 data that's imported with Reclaim. But there's also been some attempts for users vouching for other users. This is social information where someone on the system says, I think these other users are real, and their reputation in some sense is being used to give reputation to others. And maybe you can have mechanisms that punish them if they're lying or whatever. But you could also import social connections from Web 2 with Reclaim. So if someone was to log into their WhatsApp and prove which users have sent them a message on WhatsApp, now you can start building out this social graph automatically without users having to one by one select who they've made connections to, which is probably a non-starter for a lot of people having to do that by hand. And you can do this in a way where you don't reveal the actual account names of the people, but still allows connections to be made on the social graph. The whole idea is basically this cost of forgery. We want it to be cheap for real people, expensive for bots or duplicates. And there's always going to be a bit of a trade-off there. Right. Okay, so here's just a quick example. We start with the reputation for the users from their credentials alone. So this score, it's not really meaningful, but just imagine there's some numbers that these users have. We add in the social connections, and now the scores have been increased through some algorithm. Alice wants to join the system. She shows up. First, she proves with Reclaim or whatever various credentials that lend some credence to her being a real person. So her score starts out as 40. Once she imports her, pretend this is an undirected graph. Once she imports her social connections, she provably shows that person blue and person yellow had sent her a message that updates her score to be higher. And another way of doing this that we've been playing around with is you can form a statistical model of you have some priors on the probability that each person is real. You have some Bayesian update based on the connections in the graph, and you can compute the posterior using Gibbs sampling. So say each of these nodes in this graph there's two values. The left one is the prior probability that they are real. So you see this bottom cluster, they start out at 75%. The top cluster, 50%. The second number is the posterior update. So once we've added the social connections, that's now the new updated probability that they're real. Basically, what we're saying, like if there's a connection between two people, they're now correlated in that they're more likely now to either both be real or both be fake. That's what the connections are really telling you. Typically, there are many connections between bots. You know, they form these connections to try to mimic what real people look like in these social graphs. And there's obviously real connections between real people, but it's harder for bots to try to create connections with real people. So that's what gives us correlation. And you can see, imagine this is the top cluster is a bunch of bots, bottom cluster is a bunch of real people. We've got one connection between the clusters because sometimes bots trick somebody. But the updates for the bottom cluster are much higher than the updates for the top cluster. Yeah, so this shows how basically there's a lot of ideas around using credentials for cost of forgery and whatnot, but being able to put that together with social data, I think, will be really useful for proof of personhood in the future. And if you want to chat about it, reach out to me anytime. Thank you. Oh, do we have time for questions?
Hey, you mentioned cost of forgery. Is it like the main metrics for the score, for the user score?
Right. So, being able to estimate a really accurate cost of forgery, like Paula's trying to do, which I just learned about, was really useful for this for the prior portion. So the left number, before the social connections are added in, however, the higher we can make that for the real people, the better. So we can really throw in lots of different tools to try to do that, and then add the social component on top of that. How those two things interact, mathematically, that's maybe a complicated question, but definitely the more tools we can add to the mix, the better.
Yeah, so you're using cost of forgery as a score, but you calculate it probabilistically.
Yeah, so this example is probabilistic, but for sort of two ways to do it. But here it's if we're using if this is a cost of forgery, how exactly the updates will happen. Like now you have to estimate what's the cost of forging a connection. And that's a really interesting problem that I haven't started to think about. But certainly you can't, if you're not doing it really poorly, like these social connections will only improve your estimates from everything you've done without social connections.
Yeah, got it. If you ever want to know the exact price of forgery or cost of forgery, please let me know.
Oh yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah.
Another question?
So when I'm getting the initial score, I prove that I'm able to log in to that system, right? And then that proof needs to be posted on chain. Who does that? Am I able to do that right from my browser, or I need the Reclaim protocol acting as an intermediary?
So we don't have the posting to chain technology set up yet, but the Reclaim can give you the proof, the signed proof of your credential.
Okay.
So you can show that to anybody and convince them that it's true. So whoever's running this system, or if a chain was to be made where you could post that later, but you have control over this proof.
Okay. So if I'm a hacker, instead of hacking all these things, like a Bank of America, I would rather hack those, the proof generator. Am I able to do that, or that's not possible?
Oh, okay. So I guess this is the details of how the Reclaim is generating these proofs.
Yeah.
So the user logs into their account on, say, a bank server. The encrypted data comes from the bank server to what we call a tester, like a tester, notary, whatever you want to call it. They sign off on the provenance of the data. They don't see the actual unencrypted data, but they just sign off that encrypted data came from the correct source. And then the user generates the zero-knowledge proof of the contents of the data. The trust here is in that the attester is correctly signing off. Like they could be bribed to lie and sign off on something that's not correct. So the zero-knowledge proof is secure as long as you trust the attester. We have in our white paper described a mechanism to do this with a group of attesters, sort of akin to the decentralized Oracle networks, where you have a financial mechanism to try to have it in equilibrium. Everyone tells the truth. If they get caught lying, they pay something. And then the steps of that should be on chain. So these proofs they do require some level of trust. The most we can do is say, it costs a certain amount of money in expectation to bribe this group of attesters to sign off on something that's false. Yeah, we can talk about the details of that different time, but yeah, does that answer your question?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Any more questions?